video is going to cover so many different bow builds, so let's jump straight into it. To start off with, we're just going to go over the classic bow rapier. I want to mention every single bow build in this video is usable and actually really good as well. To that, there's also some completely different bow builds in this video that you might not have seen and are very unique to specific playstyles, such as the Duelist bow build, which is centered on being very tanky but still dealing damage. Before we get into that, today's video is sponsored by U7Buy, a trusted digital marketplace for all things gaming related. It's a one-stop shop for cheaper prices on gift cards, game keys, and other services at a 10% discount or more, serving millions of customers worldwide with over 30,000 reviews on Trustpilot, and you can even get a further 3% discount with code oreo at checkout. My referral link will be in the description. Alright, so without further ado, let's jump into the bow rapier with the Hoplite bow. So the Hoplite bow is, of course, earned from the last boss in the Hive of Gorgon's raid. You get Disdained Infliction and Keenly Jagged, and we add Abyssal achievements to that. I'll scroll in a little bit here so we can see these images just a tad bigger. Again, all of this builds will be on my website, apart from some of the more niche ones. But these bow builds that are on my website, link in description, or newworlddex.info, are some of, in my opinion, the most consistent bow builds that are all-rounders. So this is again the Hoplite bow, and we're using Abyssal achievement on that. We're splitting our damage to Abyssal achievement. Of course, Disdained Infliction and Keenly Jagged are very strong perks in the current meta. And of course, Finisher is our offhand, getting that extra 15% damage on a bleeding target, which is procced by Keenly Jagged or even friendlies on a team that have procced a bleed on an enemy as well. That applies to us with Finisher's Harmony, of course, and is fantastic for that. Just consistent, all-round increased DPS on both weapons. Again, if you click on anything on my website, you'll be taken straight to the New World database, so you know exactly where to get them. Jumping onto the armor, after the weapons, of course, we're running the Gorgonite crafter gear, which you get from a Gorgonite inductor, which you get once a week from the Hive of Gorgon's raid. You can turn that into the Gorgon essence at the Arcana station, and then that will be your recipe ingredient, which you can take to the outfitting station to make your Gorgonite gear. From there, on our head, we're going to be crafting it with Omnidirectional Evade. Fantastic perk. I highly recommend picking this up. We can't put this on the Finisher. We're seeing a few comments on this. So the reason why we can't put Omnidirectional Evade on the Finisher is it already has 2 weapon perks on it, making it impossible, sadly. But we definitely want on armor. It is overall a good damage increase, especially if you plan on being a lot more aggressive with your rapier. Bow builds are really good at being more open to being aggressive. Unlike Musket, you have a lot more constitution in general. Adding Void Harnessing to that for our 50% Void Split or Elemental Aversion. I also quickly want to add on here, you don't have to go with the Void Split. You could go Nature Split, Lightning Split, Arcane Split, really any element. You could even do Fire, or I wouldn't recommend that because a lot of people resist that, even this build itself. But you could go for any element. The reason I go for Void is for the next build, so we can double purpose our armor, which is the Lifetaker setup. So anyways, on with the Gorgonite shirt. The Gorgonite shirt is kind of similar. We add a weapon perk. We're doing a lasting rain of arrows, which I think is a decent pickup, and you can get some use out of. Once again, I go with Elemental Aversion. This, in my opinion, I get more out of than Enchanted Ward, especially if I get hit by a Fire Staff, Musket, or Bow ability. This will help me a lot more than Enchanted Ward will. But I know some people prefer Enchanted Ward, and that decision is up to you. My builds, I'm going to recommend Elemental Aversion, as that's what I run. On our gloves, we're going to be going for the Hasted Vigor perk, which is in the Elemental Aversion pool. I highly recommend this perk. Fantastic. You almost always have it up if you get hit, as pretty much every single build in the game has a damage over time effect these days. Void Harnessing to that as well. For our third perk, Flame Conditioning, or you could do another weapon perk. It is entirely up to you. In fact, I don't think I have it here. This should actually be Penetrating Rapid Shot. I'm going to quickly chuck that perk up on screen. I will make that change to the website in due time, but Flame Conditioning should actually be Penetrating Rapid Shot. You'll get a lot of damage out of that, especially if you run the Burst tree, as you can see on the left here. Last but not least, we're running the Attuned Leather Pants. Sorry, not last but not least, but for the armor artifacts, we're running the Attuned Leather Pants. The Attuned Leather Pants, in my opinion, are still and always will be the best, most consistent DPS armor artifact for Dex players. Now, I would quickly want to mention that you can build for the winged leather shoes. I know a lot of people do that now. And you can make it work, especially with Zephyr Cakes and Outpost Rush. You have almost permanent empower, or you do actually. But the damage is pretty much exactly the same. It's like a few hundred more damage or something like that with the winged leather shoes. But you have to keep in mind that you have to be proccing haste. And recently, or not recently, about half a year ago, they made it so the bow haste only applies at full stamina, or when switching weapons, I think on a 10-second or 5-second cooldown. So you technically don't get permanent haste unless you run Alacrity on your amulet or you're in Outpost Rush using Zephyr Cakes. Other than that, if you're in war or open world or arenas, you are not going to have permanent haste. In my opinion, the consistency of Attuned Leather Pants is far more important than the winged leather shoes min-max for a couple hundred more damage. But again, for Outpost Rush, that could be an angle. It is up to you. But again, this is my bow build, and what I would recommend, consistency is key. Last but not least, onto the shoes. We're running the Journey Blantula. Now, again, I will get onto pre-best in slot items that you can substitute until you get your best in slot. As I've mentioned before, the June boots are probably one of the hardest items in the game to get, being the 725 equivalent of Frigid Dawn in a medium piece, with Enchanted Board and Elemental Aversion, an absolutely fantastic piece of armor, slapping our Void Harnessing on that as well to get a little bit more damage. Last but not least, we can quickly mention the rune glasses we have also put in all of our armor, being the Abyssal Fire Ward. The Abyssal Fire Ward is effectively doing fire damage absorption, as that is what I get hit by the most in the current meta. You could also do some more emeralds if you find yourself getting hit by other muskets and bows, and more specifically, aimlock blunderbusses a lot as well. So again, fire damage absorption or emeralds. You could also just go for opals if you want to cover a bit of all bases, or even onyx if you so choose. Last but not least is the Abyssal Case, obviously increasing our Void Split as well. If you wanted to build for another element like nature, of course you would go for a nature case, or something like that. Onto the amulet. Again, this is another one of those best in slot items that comes from the Sandworm. It comes with health and stamina recovery, the Amulet of Sharnation, and we are adding flame protection to this. You could also do thrust protection. I wouldn't actually recommend slash protection, as to my knowledge and as of recently, ever since the tracking nerf to melee, I have not been or felt near as much of a presence of slash weapons as I once had. And in my opinion, the current meta has leaned heavily into Firestaff, and that has been my current thing that I've found needed to be dealt with or absorbed against, as that is where I take the most damage from currently. Onto the ring, Gorgonite Ring, once again hardy, void damage, increasing our void split, and then last but not least, Invigorated Punishment, which is a base damage increase. And I had a quick question that popped up yesterday in a comment. Invigorated Punishment applies to debuffs, or sorry, buffs the enemy has that are procced. So you won't get a stack of Invigorated Punishment on an enemy that has a Honing Stone or a food buff, but you will if they have something like Elemental Band stacks, Keenly Empowered, or buffs from their weapon tree itself, such as, not Keenly Empowered, such as Empowering Headshot on the Musket tree. If that enemy you shot had that up on their hotbar or on their buffed bar, that would give you a stack of Invigorated Punishment. A lot of people still do have a lot of buffs besides that, and the fact that it doesn't proc on Honing Stones and food buffs. On average, you will get at least 5% out of Invigorated Punishment, and in the rare cases, especially in mages and muskets, where we have a shitload of buffs up, or timed buffs up on our trees. Here's a quick screenshot of all the buffs I have up on my musket kit. You get almost max stacks all the time if you were to hit me with Invigorated Punishment, which is a worthwhile perk. Last but not least, the earring, the artifact, is the Endless Thirst, of course. Now that we're dropping the Elemental Band, as it is completely DOA for Dex builds, we're picking up the Endless Thirst with Empowering Toast and Fortifying Toast. The neat thing about these two toasts here is you can pick up mana pots on your inventory and backbar them if you really needed a little bit extra Empower and Fortifying Toast to fill the gaps that you don't have. In general, you shouldn't really need the Empowering Toast, but the Fortifying Toast is also really nice, as the Empowering Toast will only be used or actually feel the effect of if you weren't proccing all of your empowers on your bow tree, such as your evasive tactics on the left side here, which is, I believe, 15% empower. I chuck Nimble on my Endless Thirst. You can ultimately chuck whatever you like. You could go Nimble, Regenerating, or Refreshing Toast, which is a popular option as well. Last but not least, for the Heart Rune, I go for Stalwart Heart Rune of Stoneform. I tend to get caught out a lot in the current patch, especially with a lot of the melees now getting the Keen Speed Heavy Boots from the Sandworm, making them very fucking fast and scary, and you need that escape. In my opinion, Stoneform is a must in the current meta, and that is all of the gear. We can quickly jump onto the trees and the stats, although that is going to be covered more in depth in the later part of the video, as I want to focus on all the different armor and builds for bow, and then we can jump onto the trees, which is kind of useful for all builds, and you can jump to that chapter in the comments or in the timeline. Next, we're going to jump onto the Bow Lifetaker build. In my opinion, this is my current favorite bow setup, as it does a shitload of damage. It is utilizing the Lifetaker, of course, which has the negative energy perk, which allows us to proc the Disintegrate Void Gauntlet ability on both weapons, even on ranged attacks on our bow, which gives us a stack of rend up to 3 stacks, and gives us a void damage over time effect, making it very strong and the best damage you can possibly output with bow currently. And again, same bow as the Bow Rapier setup, Hoplite Bow with the Abyssal Attunement and Augmented Abyssal. Of course, to min-max this build, it is very good to go with the Void Split and the Void Harnessings. So again, I would highly recommend sticking to that, and is why with my Bow Rapier setup, I recommend going with Void, so you can double purpose your armor for both builds. Jumping onto the mask, it's the same as Elemental Aversion, Void Harnessing, Flame Conditioning, becoming very tanky. It is quite nice, I like that. Fire Absorption, especially in the current meta. You know, I think we almost at 50% Fire Absorption, especially with the conditionings, which is very strong. Again, splitting our damage with the Abyssal Cases, the Fire Damage Absorption obviously coming through as well. Gorgonite Shirt, same thing, lasting rain of arrows, a nice little utility perk there. Onto the gloves, again, Hasted Vigor being that essential pickup alongside your harnessing, and a conditioning which you could replace with a Penetrating Rapid Shot if you use the burst tree on the left here with that ability. And then again, Truly the Pants still being that prime artifact there for the bow to get the most stats and damage out of. And the June Boots as your best in slot pickup with the Enchanted and Elia version combination. Amulet of Sharnation, also the same thing. You know, Fire Protection, you could do Thrust Protection as well. Comes with Stam and Health, obviously very good. The Gorgonite Ring, Invigorated Hardy Void Damage, same as Void, or Fire Damage, sorry, Absorption as the gem slots, but you could also do emeralds in your jewelry, even opals, if you want to cover a bit of all bases, like shown on the Endless Thirst here. Last but not least, again, Stalwart Heart Rune of Stoneform. If you really want to max out your DPS and you're confident in your positioning, you could go for Brutal or Cunning Heart Rune of Cannon Blast and get some really nice bursts going, only if you're extremely confident in your positioning. And if I almost forgot to mention it, we're adding Slowing Tether to the Lifetaker, as that is essential for a little bit of utility. Onto the next tree. Now, these are on NWBuddy, as these ones are not on my website, but I will have the link to the NWBuddy gear set for these in my description. This is the classic Boltcaster DPS setup. The next setup is going to cover the Boltcaster with the Duelist setup, but this is the standard Boltcaster with the max damage setup. So we're, again, our stats are going to be different on this one compared to our other builds. So we'll show all the stats and trees in this one that I recommend. Again, Boltcaster is still a fantastic build, up there with the finisher builds as well. And a lot of people still prefer the Boltcaster in competitive comps in war especially. And it is still performing and an outstanding build and trumps a lot of melee and even musket builds still. So again, we're going 50 strength, 400 dex, 150 int with 100 con on this one. Maxing out our DPS, I did a lot of testing, and this was what gave me the best results in terms of damage, is that 150 int, the 50 strength passive works phenomenally on bow, and you get a lot out of that as well. So as you can see, a bow heavy attack can do upwards of 10k on a crit hit. Of course, that doesn't take into account elemental mitigation the opponent you're shooting might have, but this is a best case scenario. Of course, their armor is going to cut off a decent amount of that, right? But jumping down into the trees here, so again, these trees will be present in the later part of the video as well, like the birch tree and the grace tree for rapier. We don't really need to cover that too much, as we do have a dedicated chapter for the trees, so we can jump straight onto the armor. Of course, the armor is a little bit different here. We're going to be opting for lightning harnessing, of course, over void harnessing, to increase our overall lightning damage. And then we're also going to be picking up the electrified or lightning ring glass cases to also increase our lightning damage. Again, going for that fire damage absorption, and of course picking up elemental aversion as my preferred perk. Of course, you could go for enchanted board if that is your preference. It is up to you, but in my builds I recommend and use elemental aversion. You could also go for hasted, you should also go for hasted vigor in this armor set as well, again being one of those essential perks that you will get a lot of utilization out of, as that haste is very good in the current meta, especially when you see a lot of melee running it as well, stacking on their Zephyr Cakes, their Keen Speed Boots. A lot of melee currently almost have 30% perma uptime on haste, which is fucking nuts. And you really need those escapes. Again, Attune Leather Pants for the best damage. Once again, want to mention that you could do wing leather shoes, but I recommend Attune Leather Pants purely for the consistency. Wing leather shoes you might get a few hundred more damage out of at the cost of potential consistency. So, scrolling down, again, June boots as well. We will cover pre-best in slot later in the video and what you can substitute things for until you get that best in slot. Once again, the jewelry is very similar, in fact exactly the same other than the ring, running that amulet of Sharnishan as well, and then of course the Gorgonite ring, we are running the lightning damage over the void damage, invigorated punishment as well as a nice pickup there. Endless Thirst, also with Nimble, again you could do regenerating or refreshing toast if you feel like you get more use out of that. Again, I like Nimble, I think is a very underrated perk. Scrolling down, we have the Boltcaster, and for the last perk on the Boltcaster, I recommend Keenly Jagged. I don't think I've mentioned it yet. If you want to know how to upgrade your artifacts, you take it to the Gypsum Kiln, make sure the artifact is not equipped, not in the gear set, and is sitting in your bag. The same goes for named items, make sure it's in your bag, not equipped, not in the gear set, and it's unlocked. The lock gets a lot of people on why it won't show up at the Gypsum Kiln. Following those 3 rules, unlocked, not in gear set, not equipped, it will show up in the Gypsum Kiln to upgrade and add your 3rd perk to. So, of course, we have the Boltcaster here. I've added Keenly Jagged to it, which in my opinion is the best damage increase you can add to Boltcaster, as it already has Enchanted, and of course you can't add Attunement to it as it has a Sharking perk. Now the Rapier, we've got the Hoplite Rapier here, which is a fantastic Rapier, especially for PvE, but there is another alternate if you want to go for more burst damage rather than damage over time, and that is especially present in the Duelist setup we'll show next. I'm quickly going to show it here, but simply it is called the Life Ring Rapier. Again, you can go to the New World database or click on it in the NWBuddy link or NWBuddy gear set, and it'll take you to the location on where to find it. But the Life Ring Rapier has an illegal perk combo of Vicious and Rogue. Now, the max gear score for this is 700, but it has got insane perks that lead to more damage than it being 725 gear score. Last, we want to add Omnidirectional Evade onto this. Unlike the finisher, the biggest benefit to this build is that we can add that Omni to it and get that extra weapon damage and, in my opinion, be the best DPS rapier in the game. And again, you can add your Electrified Augmented to that as well. So that is the rapier I'd recommend if you want to go for more burst over dot damage. Again, Stalwart Hardened of Stone Form is a great pickup, especially in the current meta, where a lot of melee have upwards of 30% permanent haste. Now we're going to jump onto a bit more of a niche bow build, which is the Duelist Boltcaster bow build. This is an extremely tanky setup. You still deal good damage because you're of course using the Boltcaster. A heavy in a best case scenario can do 8k. Realistically, you're probably going to see around 4k with a heavy attack with this setup. But what makes this build so damn good and so tanky is you get almost 300 fucking con out of it. You have almost 20,000 HP. You might as well be a damn tank with this build. It is that strong. You have an insane amount of armor as well because this utilizes the featherweight. And this is my first sort of more niche build that is fantastic for people that love dueling, playing arenas or the free-for-all island, or just love being super aggressive in Outpost Russian War. This build may be for you because of how freaking tanky it is. So again, 350 dex, we're not running any intel strength, we're purely bumping our con and dex, which is all you really need to deal still good damage, but again, be incredibly tanky. Now, I do want to quickly mention there are some substitutes we had to go with to make the stat attributes work because of Magnify at 725, which we will jump onto here in a sec. Again, trees, you can jump onto the trees chapter of the video if that is what you're looking for. So, jumping onto the armor here, we have some 700 gear score substitutes again because we have to make the stats work because of Magnify. We're running heavy Frigid Dawn headwear, which allows us to get Enchantable and Elemental Aversion. Our third perk on all of this gear is going to be Shirking Heals. Of course, we're going for the Duelist setup with Self-Sustain. You're going to be basically you won't have to worry about dying unless you seriously fuck up with this build. Not only that, you also get Haste of Vigor, but running down through the line of armor here, we've got that, again, that Frigid Dawn. We're running the Electrified Fireward, again, getting our Lightning Split. We, of course, don't have Harnessing in this build as we're opting to be more tanky, but we get that Empower back through Empowering Toast and through our Lightning Rune Glasses. In turn, we still should be hitting almost 50% Empower with Empowering Explosive Arrow, which is a perk we put on our pants, which I'll get onto later. So, anyways, Shirking Heals is going to be fantastic and amazing for this build. Jumping onto the Featherweight, of course, we're adding Shirking Heals to that as well. Same Rune Glass. You don't have to go with Fire Resistance if you don't want to, but that is what I'm going to recommend, as you could go, and again, in the current meta, Fire Staff does the most damage, and it is up to you though. You could, once again, you could go for more Emeralds or Thrust Protection. You could go for Opals for a little bit more general resistance, or even mix in a little bit of Onyx in there as well. I like Fire. I would go for Fire Resistance with Emeralds in this build, bit of Thrust, bit of Fire, as that's what you're generally going to take the most damage to. But if you want to be ultra tanky, you probably could just go with flat Onyx and Opal mixed in, and try and go for 10% general resistance on everything in the game, which I think is possible if you do like a couple rubies, so like 1 ruby, 1 emerald, 1 moonstone, and then I think the rest Opal, I think it was, and then like 2 Onyx. I can't remember the exact composition on that. I'll have to leave that up on screen. But in general, I think this is the best gem setup, especially in the current meta. Once again, adding Penetrating Rapid Shot to the gloves here is a very good pickup for damage, especially in a tanky build like this where we have substituted a lot of our damage stats from Intelligence and Strength into our Constitution. We still do have 350 dex though, and you still do a lot of damage. Last but not least, we're running the Gorgon's Pants medium, but oh yeah, I forgot to mention, so yeah, again, the Frigid Dawn is a 700 gear score cat piece, same with our gloves, the Spinweave gloves. These are a 700 gear score craft, using the Azoth Conductor, or the Azoth Inductor, sorry, which you can buy from the faction vendor, or I believe you get one from the season pass as well, if you still have it sitting around. Much cheaper craft as well, which is the nice benefit of it. And you're going to be adding a Penetrating Rapid Shot to that, Elemental Aversion, and of course, Shirking Heals. If you wanted to, you could substitute this Elemental Aversion for Enchanted Ward. That is up to you. I would go Elemental Aversion personally. Once again, chucking on the Electrified case with your choice of absorption. Onto the Gorgon Pants anyways. This is a 725 medium pant craft. Adding Haste the Vigor so we can't run Elemental Aversion as they are the same perk pool, but this is a must-have perk, especially in the current meta. Once again, your melee are almost getting 30% perma haste. Empowering Explosive Arrow, this makes up for a lot of the losses we have, especially in our damage, especially losing out on our harnessing. We get all that back just by using Empowering Explosive Arrow. And then last but not least, we have Shirking Heals, of course, to max out our self-sustain. Then we have the best in slot boots, the June Plantula, which again, once again, come from the Sandworm. You have Shirking Heals added to that with that illegal perk combo of Enchanted Ward and Elemental Aversion. Then we have the Ankh, which is, in my opinion, the key to this whole build, coming in with Divine and Center of Attention, which makes your self-sustain through your Shirking Heals go through the roof, and is what, again, once again, brings this build back together. I should have put that to 725. This uses Thrust Protection, Health, and Divine. Again, we added Thrust Protection to it. You could add any other protection you like. It is up to you. Once again, the ring is a little bit different. Of course, adding lightning damage for our Boltcaster, getting a little bit of Empower from that, a little bit of a damage increase. Healing Breeze is the unique perk here. You basically get to heal a little bit, and this stacks with Divine, stacks with all of your other self-sustain perks, and is absolutely fantastic. And I believe it is once again bugged and works with Shirking Heals. Typical AGS, nothing works as intended. So this is a very busted perk and great to have. Of course, Hardy is a must. You're going to add that on there. For the earring, Empowering Toast. So when you drink a potion, you get that Empower, which again makes up for Empower you might have lost through the harnessings you don't have anymore. So that is in general a good pickup as well. Refreshing Toast, also another good pickup, especially when your potions are weaker. It can be very, very beneficial. And of course, we have Regenerating, which is another fantastic pickup for self-sustain, which this build is all about, being in people's face and being very tanky. Like, once again, almost getting 300 con. Last but not least, we have the Boltcaster, once again adding Keenly Jagged to that, and then we have the Life Ring Rapier for that really good rapier burst damage, absolutely insane burst damage actually, which really ties this build all together for that aggressive playstyle, where generally you will be using your rapier a lot for damage. And last but not least, we have the Stalwart Heartrune of Stoneform, of course being very tanky with this build. You can take that even further, and basically you should effectively, playing this build right, you should never be able to die unless you're getting sent by a whole group. You should be able to live most things. That's how tanky this build is and how confident I would be in this build. Having almost 20,000 HP, you really don't need to worry about much. That pretty much wraps up all of the builds, and I think now is when I want to cover the pre-best in slot options that you have. So one of the more important pre-best in slot options you have as a Dex player is the Azoth Crystal set. This is just a fantastic set of armor that you can farm from, your mutation level 2s, or you can craft with the mutated materia from your desired dungeon that you want to farm out. Azoth Crystal set does come with refreshing, but it comes with Enchanted Ward, and in my opinion, this is the best budget set pieces you can get. But on top of that, if you didn't even have the Azoth Crystal set before that, you could simply use gear that you buy from the trading post and filter it to Enchanted Ward, which is the bare minimum you would need to at least perform in PvP, whether you be grinding out the PvP track to get some of the best in slot stuff like Ankh, which brings the set together. You could also take this a little bit further and pre-best in slot, if you get lucky, use the Shirking Heals set you get from the PvP track. I can't quite remember the name of it, but you'll see it pop up on the PvP track when you get it. It's a named item that has Shirking Heals on it. That is some fantastic pre-best in slot gear you can get, and you can add an Enchanted Ward or Elemental Aversion to that set, as I believe it comes with health and Shirking Heals, saving you a lot of gold in the process. Last but not least, we can cover the bow trees, as I do have a few on my website. So we have, I think, 3 trees here for the bow. So we have the Duelist tree. This is what you'll probably be running if you ran the Duelist set here, which is the evade shot. Having a little bit more of that mobility can be very beneficial. Getting that stagger as well. Running explosive shot, and then of course pen arrow is quite a good damage dealer and quite a neglected ability in my opinion. For the more general bow build, this is the one that most people will use, and I think is the best DPS to utility, and this is again what most people use in war and things like that, is the penetrating rapid shot, explosive arrow, and then rain of arrows, of course, being a great utility ability, applying to slows and bleeds. Last but not least, you have the poison tree. This one is a bit more hit or miss. If you really like to pad, this is going to be the setup for you. But those are the 3 bow trees I'd recommend. I don't really ever recommend picking up the evade shot unless you're doing the Duelist build, but that is up to you. And if I didn't mention already, the stats on the builds are on my website or on the NWBuddy builds in the description if you missed it, in case I missed it myself. So with the Duelist set, you know, you're obviously going for 350 dex and the rest in con. With the Bow Rapier Boltcaster set, you're obviously going for a lot more damage. And last but not least, with the Bow Rapier and the Bow VG, you're going for a lot more damage over con as well. Even a glass cannon option for stats here if you really wanted to max out your DPS. I think that is finally everything for the ultimate bow guide. And we do actually have some more niche bow build guides I didn't include in this video that will have their own videos, which covers things such as the bow spear, the bow hatchet, but in this video I wanted to cover the more general bow builds that you might see, and in my opinion bow sin is not that great. I think it's overrated as fuck. Bow hatchet is dog shit. Bow finisher and bow boltcaster are superior in every way in my opinion, and without further ado, that is the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace. god, what is with some bows playing like a fucking musket, dude? Like, holy fuck, it's so irritating. You got the most OP whip in the game, you're playing like 5,000 fucking meters away. Like, bro, he's already all the way over there. Fucking get close, cunt. It's so irritating. He's jiggle peeking. Oh, he needs battle bread? I can't be bothered farming it. My bow build? Yeah, sure. Fucking hell, PvE, man. Fucking cringe lords in it here. Elemental Aversion and, Arcane Harnessing are my two main perks. The rest are just, whatever, the cheap perk, yeah. Rubies and Opal Wards with, Arcane Attunement. And then Syncretic Bow with Pen Rapids, and then Finisher with, both Empowered Augmented. Tanglevine Amulet, and Vigil. That's actually the wrong ring. Fuck. Hang on. Red Hot Slag with Arcane, Piloting, and Hardy. And then the last piece was Endless Thirst with Nimble on it. Chance Ring's best. Yeah, Chance Ring's good too, for sure. Yeah, Rapids on this perk here is insane. It's absolutely insane. Especially on a bruiser, it's fucking nutty. Should that follow on me? Soul Shard's it worth? No, because it costs like 20,000 per upgrade, right? Like you need a armor matrix, and then you need 3 chromatic seals. That's already like 20,000 gold, right? Meanwhile, crafting like a piece like this, like a Tuperka with just a weapon matrix, like as long as you have a crafter, it costs like 8k an upgrade. Like it's really cheap. Because it's around 8k to 10k for just one craft. One 2-perk craft. Guaranteed 2-perk. So it's way cheaper to just do weapon matrix crafts. So you just need to find someone that you know that can craft, or if you have crafting up yourself, that's the best way to go about it. Nice little warm up there. GG's.